Hey guys, Lauren Golden here from Living Golden. I wanted to make a video for you guys because I've been getting most of my questions on social media around the topic of homeschooling. And I think a lot more people in general these days are homeschooling, unschooling, world schooling, all the things. I think COVID really made it something that a lot more people were curious about. And I think our education system, whether your kids are at private school, public school, whatever you currently do, this is a no judgment zone. We have done all the things in our family of 5 at this point. I went to private school. My husband went to charter school. Our kids have been in public school. We've done homeschooling the traditional way. And on our current RV trip, we are really just trying to figure out what works best for us, as well as 3 very different kids' personalities and learning styles. So homeschooling in the RV is really interesting because, if I'm honest with you, it was the one thing holding me back when my husband first said, like, hey, what do you think about doing this full time? It took me almost a year to get on board. And my biggest hesitation was like, our kids and how disruptive this is going to be to their lives. We had moved at the end of COVID. So right when COVID happened, we were homeschooling like everybody, but through the public school system that my kids were in Texas. And it was horrible because what I realized was I was trying to replicate school at home. And we knew we were going to be moving that fall. So we actually withdrew them from school because the whole virtual thing was not working out very well for us. And so we ended up homeschooling, again, not super successfully, that whole fall of 2020. But I'm so grateful for that experience because what it taught me is that learning and school are not the same thing. And I was trying to do school, lots of worksheets, lots of just like, we bought a curriculum for each of our kids. We learned that actually for us is not very successful because it really keeps our family in a box. And 2 of my kids don't really operate most successfully in a box. And arguably, none of us should really be confined to a box. Even those of us, myself included, my oldest daughter included, who are successful in it, we really need something else. And so I'm really grateful for that experience of COVID because it taught me that learning is really the goal. And so once I got over the fact that we weren't in fact ruining our kids' lives, but bringing them this really cool opportunity to learn hands-on out in the world, travel, and be exposed to a lot of different things. And we decided to go all in with this trip. This became so much easier. And the focus was always then going to be on learning from that point and not just school. So with that being said, I do have some non-negotiables. I don't know what the future is going to hold. Currently, I got 3 kids. They are 11, 9, and 6, and they are currently in 6th grade and 4th grade and 1st grade, if you were to measure it that way. And my oldest kiddo is too smart for her own good, and we butt heads. We're really similar, and she is very highly social and really flourishes in that environment. So we actually looked into a really cool virtual school option for her called Sora, which, if you want to know more about Sora from our experience, let me know and I can make a different video all about that. But we've had a really positive experience. She's, in leadership roles, she's made a bunch of friends, and for her, that was the best solution. So really, I'm just homeschooling my younger 2. And even with this sort of unschooling, focused on learning approach, I have some non-negotiables. Those include reading comprehension, phonics, handwriting, writing in general, and math. We do those things or some combination of those things every single day. And my biggest reason for that's probably the most traditional, in the box kind of learning that I really want to keep them being consistent with. And we play with how we do it. We have a lot of different resources, but I want to be consistent because I don't know what the future holds. And if we do ever go back to a private school, a public school, even a non-traditional learning environment like Sora, I just want to make sure that they're not behind academically for where they need to be in those areas. So if I'm a stickler on anything, it's really that we're reading, writing, working on our handwriting and our phonics every single day. And my son was actually in kindergarten when COVID started. So he's been a little bit behind anyway, and he's gotten to work with some amazing professionals in a traditional school environment that I want to make sure that I'm continuing to fill in that gap for him. So you heard me say unschooling, but you might not be familiar with that is if you don't homeschool. So the idea behind unschooling is that you're using a child's interests to direct their learning. And this was hard for me at first because, again, I bought a bunch of different resources, and I can link to those below this video just on Amazon. We've we've done the traditional curriculum route that fall of 2020 during COVID. And for us, it really pigeonholed us, and it put a lot of pressure on stuff that did not give us the room to explore what they're interested in. Now I can be a stickler for things like math or reading or writing, but my kids have like complete control over what those things are. I'm not telling them what they have to read. They're getting to choose what they read. I'm not telling them what they have to write about. They're taking their own interests either in what we're doing in our trip. By every kid is keeping a daily journal of our trip, which is writing, but it's also something they can look back on and reflect on. Right now, Henry is working on a report on Lamborghinis. I could care less, but he developed my husband's passion for cars. And so I'm like, great, let's do research. So we're building out all of our ideas around this topic. We built a web, and now just today, actually, he finished his rough draft, and it's the longest thing he's ever written because it's something he's actually interested in. So the cool thing about Unschooling is I can just listen to little conversations they're having. Even just today, because of this essay that we wrote about Lamborghini, we learned that the bull in the logo actually comes from Lamborghini, the founder's zodiac sign, which also happens to be my zodiac sign. My birthday is May 11th. Love birthdays. And my kids are all like, what's a zodiac sign? And so I have found all these really cool children appropriate resources, and we're going to be learning about their own zodiac signs. Like, is this knowledge that they have to have? Of course not, but they're interested, and so they're excited to learn about it. So it took a while, and sometimes I still have doubts. So if you homeschool or you're considering it and you're like, I don't want to break my kids, I don't want to get them behind, like, am I doing good enough? I have had all of those thoughts today. So I worry about these things as well. However, I see them getting excited about learning. I see them developing the tools and the skills to figure things out, to want to know more about something, and to be curious. And I think that's the strong foundation of a lifelong learner. One of the other terms that I came across when I started doing my research on this sort of less conventional form of education and learning is world schooling. And that's defined as kind of a type of unschooling, but where travel is the backdrop for all the things that you're doing. And when I read this, I'm like, I mean, that's exactly what you do when you are living full-time in an RV. We're going to different national parks. We're experiencing different cultures and types of people, even little nuances about like going to a new state that doesn't allow plastic bags or straws when you came from a state where that was no problem, sparks conversations around politics, environmental concerns. There's so many dialogues happening every day, really just answering my kids' questions about the different nuances of different cities and states that we're experiencing. Most of our science and social studies curriculum, if not all, is coming from these experiences. For starters, we just went to our 24th national park. National parks are amazing playgrounds, beautiful places, but more than that, they have a junior ranger program. Now, they're different at every park and how intense they are in terms of like really learning or hands-on or expectations, but some of them are pretty intense. When we went to Glacier National Park, it actually took Henry 4 days to get his done, and both girls quit because it was like a whole little curriculum on Glacier National Park to earn this badge. So it's rewarding for the kids. It's gamified, as we would say, in the online business space, and it makes them want to do it. They're working towards achieving something. We went and saw a dam, and so we did a science experiment with marshmallows and water, and will it hold? Before we went to see the dam, we watched YouTube videos about beavers, the original dam builders, and why they build it, and do they live in dams? They don't, by the way. You can go learn that on your own. And so we're really taking the things we're doing and then asking questions like, where did this start? What else can we learn about this? So the last 2 national parks that we visited happened to be formed on and from volcanoes. We just went to Crater Lake National Park. We went to Lassen Volcanic National Park. And so it kind of came after the fact, but I was like, what do my kids know about volcanoes? How do you know if it's dormant or active? And like, there was actually a lot of fear from my kids of like, we're on a volcano, that's scary, and how do we talk about that? How do we predict it? YouTube has so many free resources, but like I mentioned, so much of homeschooling and learning, it doesn't have to be just watching someone talk or writing about it, although we do those things. We also got out our clay and they made volcanoes. We ended up Googling how to do a science experiment using vinegar and baking soda, and they could decorate a volcano and kind of see it explode. So I've just learned that if I'm patient and managing my own expectations about what school should look like. There's so many things accessible that don't take a lot of time, don't cost a lot of money, and are really hands-on activities for the kids that they find fun, which is making them enjoy the learning process. Speaking of money and homeschooling, we used Amazon to buy a lot of resources. Two other things, though, that I want to shout out that I've been utilizing so far in our experience. One is Teachers Pay Teachers. I was able to get some really awesome handwriting worksheets that I was looking for something really in particular. I didn't want it to be boring. I didn't want it to be letters. Everything I found on Amazon was like, blah. And so I was able to find exactly what I was looking for on that resource. The other resource, which we actually discovered from a Facebook ad during COVID, and we've used ever since, is Outschool. And Audrey just started taking a gymnastics class and she's loving it. Plus she's moving her body. Henry is taking an art class, which he is naturally very gifted at. And so something else that I'm always reminding myself with homeschooling is, yes, I do have these non-negotiable expectations of like practicing reading, writing, and math, and just making sure that we're getting our reps in. But moreover, one of my favorite books is The Values Factor. And he talks about like, you care about what you value. And another favorite book of mine, these are two business books, is Strengths-Based Leadership. And both of those things combined says that like, a kid struggles with math and we go get him a math tutor, instead of, a kid excels at art and we get him an art tutor to like really develop those strengths. And so something that I'm kind of having to unlearn myself from my own childhood and just society in general is like, it's okay if Henry's never going to have the best handwriting. Like, it's okay if Audrey doesn't love math. I can massage these things and we can grow, but I can also choose to put my focus on where they do have natural strengths, where they have innate interests, and I can put my focus on really supporting those things, because ultimately that's probably going to be where their future lies, whether that's in the form of a hobby or a job or, college or whatever the heck is going to come in the future. So it's required a lot of self-awareness for me as their mom/teacher. But I'm really proud of the progress that we're all making as a family and getting to do things that we really love and getting better at those things. So on top of school, I'll talk about schedule. It's really fluid. Daphne's with her virtual school kind of dictates our day. She's got a morning and afternoon checkpoint with her house, a la Harry Potter style. And so we kind of revolve in between. And then if I have calls, my calls are first thing in the morning. Justin usually has calls in early afternoon. So every day looks a little bit different. Now, I'm naturally pretty type A, so not having a rigorous schedule at first was really difficult for me. But I had to kind of release all of that and know that what we have instead is kind of daily expectations. We have a loose agenda, and it's like you get your free time when you have done everything expected. So the kids are inside right now playing Minecraft all together. That's their tech time for the day. It's their joint play time. They play together really well when they're able to do something they all love, but they didn't get to do it till they finished all of the expectations for the day. And that's for their school tasks. On top of that, we have daily tasks. They have a daily tasks chart that I got off Amazon way before we left, and they're customized for each kid. And what's really cool is if they complete all their daily tasks in a day, they earn a point. We have point cards as well, and if they earn 10 points, it looks like a little punch card that you'd get from like a Subway shop. When they get all 10 points, they actually get $10 on their debit card. We have Greenlight, which if you're not familiar with the Greenlight app, it's amazing. Kids actually can't get debit cards through a traditional bank till they're like 14 or something crazy, but all my kids manage their own money. Plus, they have financial literacy videos for kids on Greenlight, which we also do as part of our homeschooling. And they're able to buy their own treats. They're able to buy their own souvenirs based on the money they earn from their daily tasks. So things on their daily tasks, some of them are academic, like reading out loud to a family member, but it's also family contributions, like helping fold the laundry or doing the dishes. So a lot of our sort of unschooling is learning how to take care of the RV, learning how to live in a small space together, and everybody contributing. Henry knows how to empty the water tanks by himself. Everybody has to help with the dog, just like back at home, or emptying the litter box that we have on board. So there's lots of different ways, and I think things that my kids are learning that, they had chores and family contributions back home, but I think there's a lot more they're having to learn with us moving all the time and just being on the go, and lots of problems come up, lots of stuff breaks. And so they're kind of getting that exposure as well, where they, they're learning life skills that I think maybe they wouldn't have access to at home, or frankly, with a traditional school schedule and work schedule, we wouldn't have time for. Okay, I'll end with this. I just want to say I am not an expert. I did not go to school to be an educator. I am constantly learning. I have days where I am struggling and second guessing myself. I made a huge declaration within, I think, the first 2 weeks of us starting homeschooling on this RV trip back in August about I'm not going to force it on days where they're not feeling it. There are days where my kids dig their heels in the sand. Usually it's just one of them. But they are they're not doing it. They're not having it. And my policy is if they're not having it, I'm not doing it. I'm not forcing it. I will read to them that day extra, or I will, try to find a PBS show that I know is subliminally educational. Wild Kratts is our go-to. We also have access to IXL and Prodigy, which are learning platforms, but also gamified learning platforms. And so maybe that's what we do that day. We're having a little bit more iPad time. However, it's geared towards not free time doing Minecraft. It's geared towards education, but then we don't have to deal with mom so much, because the idea of doing mom's expectations, we're just not having it. I just will not butt heads with them on those days. There's days where I don't want to do anything. And so I just said early on, if they're not having it, I'm not going to force it. And that has definitely kept the peace. And I think moreover, it's healthier for our relationship as teacher and mom, that on those days I can just be mom and kind of see what's going on. Why are we stressed? What do we need emotionally? Are we just tired? And we're not really having to force it. So being someone who's type A, I thrived in the box. I did well in school. It wasn't until my 20s that I realized that, maybe there's another way to go about life. And that's when I started my business. And that kind of was this huge spiral into personal development that ultimately led us to living in this thing. And I think it's pretty cool now that I get to unlearn myself while learning alongside my children. I think that they are having a once in a lifetime experience. And even if we weren't traveling by RV, I think there's a lot of really, really positive things that can come from homeschooling. And the biggest one that I will note is that it doesn't take 7 or 8 hours. They're not gone all day. We're together. And, we don't usually push straight through, but if we did, we'd probably be done with all of our work in hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. It usually takes 4 because we do take breaks. We play outside. We have snacks. Today, we baked a bunch of vegan treats from my cookbook because Audrey asked to. And I'm like, cool. And we're measuring and we're talking about it as we're doing. So I just want to give you permission, if you're looking into homeschooling or you have questions or whatever, again, I'm not an expert. I haven't been doing this forever. I didn't write a book about it. We're frankly making it up as we go along. And there are days where I have to go read research about it to remind myself that I'm not breaking my children and that they are going to be okay, and we're all going to be okay, and we're going to make it. And then I also get to see those moments of when they connect the dots and they have the aha moment and they figure something out that they thought was hard and they can't do. And that feels pretty good too. So that's what I got for you about homeschooling, and homeschooling specifically from full-time RV life. If you guys have any questions, drop them down below. I would love to answer them. And if you want to hear more about anything else from the Goldens on Living Golden, let us know. Be sure to like, subscribe, share it with somebody if you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you guys next week.